The big Crusader Kings 3 Royal Court patch 1.5.1 launched today. Here I am to deliver hopefully all of the new news and changes to you in a concise way. You can see already the massive length that these patch notes cover. I'm going to try and digest them down, show you some of the gameplay in the background, and cover off these key changes. Here they are on your screen, from revamped cultures to throne rooms, artifacts, new events, and more. Let's jump straight in. And I thought a good place to jump in would be right here, inside of a tribal courtroom. Let's first talk changes to balance and new gameplay features. That's the thing you probably care about the most. I'm going to start with tribal kings and emperors, who can now access the royal court. Pretty important part of the Royal Court DLC. Of course, I am playing as a tribal leader here, so you can see what the experience looks like. You'll note some changes and restrictions around the grandeur of my court. In a nutshell, there are 4 or 5 things that you need to know about how this works. For starters, the expected grandeur level is always the same as the current. It cannot be above or below it. All amenities levels, except for the first 2, are blocked if you're playing as tribal. You would have seen that at the start, and you'll see that again once I get my ass absolutely kicked in this fight. Amenity costs are greatly increased if you're a tribal emperor or king. Previously they were very cheap. The only access you have is to one royal court type, one court type, and that is tribal. Again, you'll see that in this footage. You can choose to keep it if you feudalize, but you'll be a little more limited as you move forward. Overall, really great to see our tribal warlords, kings and emperors and such, have access to this system. Great to see. And one of the complaints that I read when I was covering the Crusader Kings Royal Court DLC initially was how restricted it was, not just to tribal, but also if you're not quite at that level of grandeur to be a king or an emperor, and therefore you don't have access to your royal court. It's nice to see one of those big things being tweaked here in this gameplay and in this update. Let's move through and talk again now here about some of the additional content that was added. Not only did tribes get access to the royal court, but we have a whole load of stuff listed here under game content. Let me give you the highlights. Firstly, they've added 3 additional new hunt events and 3 additional new feast events around artifacts. Something you'll see me play with in this footage, and a reoccurring theme here, and one of the main themes of this update. Keep that in the back of your mind. They've also added a whole load of new things to lifestyle events. For example, a new martial one, a new skullduggery lifestyle event, a new intimidation lifestyle event, to name a few. There are some more as well, some really interesting ones that I thought I would highlight here. You might get a kick out of them like I did. A new event for characters with the Lisp trait, a new set of events surrounding the athletic trait, and an event where you can combine a relic artifact with a weapon artifact. Now, these might all seem like little trivial examples, but there are loads of them here. Other events relate to faith chains. Another one for the Oliphant artifact. I mean, there are just loads of little things that have been added to help add a little bit more spice to the game, to help keep the events fresh. I was playing around a little bit later in this footage with some artifacts, and again actually saw this come through. But no spoilers, of course. I don't want to ruin the great war efforts that you're about to see take place in my tribal kingdom here, properly with a royal court. Anyway, let's move through. I think I won't dwell too much more on the additional content that's been added. Again, the full patch notes will be in the description if you'd like to delve into them fully. But I'd like to move through into another thing, which I think slides along quite nicely here, and that's user modding and customization that's been enabled to us. You will have seen at the very start of this video, I showed some footage of the incredible efforts that people have gone to in the banner customization screen, and that reminds me also of user modding, which received a little bit of love in this patch. If you're interested in modding and you're interested in the impacts that modding can have, like adding a whole load of new events to the game, then you'll be pleased to see that in this update, users can now, as part of the modding process, trigger court amenities, owning effects, replacing effects, unequip artifact from owner effects, loads of things that have been added into the modding tools. My understanding of these is relatively limited, so you might want to jump in and have a look at the patch notes yourself. But overall, I see loads of changes and abilities that modders will be able to add to the game, like those things around court amenities, around equipping and unequipping artifacts, but also more than that too. Loads of additions to the shading and lighting and all sorts of stuff around the actual royal courtrooms themselves. Again, You will have seen that at the start of this video, something that Paradox mentioned explicitly in the development diary. By the way, developer diary number 90! So go you! How good to see. Those are the main sort of key points to take home. I think I've showed them on screen. I've talked about the ones that sort of feel the most impactful to me. Now let's discuss how all of this comes together to shape what this update is actually about. What is the game impact that the 1.5.1, the Royal Court patch, so to speak, the one big update since the release, actually has on the game? My initial inklings and feelings from reading the patch notes and from playing the patch is that this update is really about bringing new events. I note that some of them aren't just one-offs, but actually reoccurring events, annual events, or they're adding to existing annual events, like going out on a hunt, and so on and so forth. It's about upgrading those events and pulling them in line with better visual supports, right? The other big overarching thing of this update that I showed on screen at the start was changes to how artifacts are rendered, how artifacts are brought into the game with more events. Then you have the lighting upgrades, not just that modders now have greater access to, but actually overall, the devs made a specific point of showing in the dev diary that they'd changed the lighting features of different royal courts. The way that the shadows and lighting effects and so on go to paint that world. That was supported by those new weapon models, those new artifact models that you saw again at the very start of this video. If you didn't see them, you might want to bounce back and just take another look. Overall, we can see that they've added new events, year-long events, individual events, events relating to artifacts. Combine that with this new royal courtroom. Look at that beautiful light shining in from those windows in the background. I mean, you just can't fault it. Overall, I think you can see the kind of message that I'm putting down here. This is the first major patch since the first major expansion to Crusader Kings 3, the Royal Court DLC. Paradox have shown with this, the 90th developer diary update, that they will continue to update Crusader Kings 3 and provide more value to it. Of course, I would be very surprised if we didn't continue to see expansions for this game for a long time to come, but that is completely out of scope for this video, so I might just park that one there and come back to the topic at hand. The update added new events. It improved the Royal Court look. It also added some uniquely Royal Court feeling things, not just in the events, not just in the modding support, not just in the whole load of bug fixes that were introduced, and I should also note some stability and performance improvements. It's important to note that they were fairly light on those in the update. In fact, I have the notes here, of course, from memory, in fact, from indeed reading it. It has significantly improved the performance of portraits and improved the performance of the throne room scene. Again, reinforcing what I've just said. All of this is leading into a royal court experience that is more accessible. Shout out to you, tribal chieftains and tribal rulers, but also maybe looks better and performs better with other elements of the game. Again, those artifacts, another one that comes back to me. Jump towards some footage here at the end, and you might even see me playing around with some of my own. I did do a lot more of it off screen, I should say. We need to stream Royal Court again sometime soon. I'm going to now conclude the video here so that I don't go off onto a rambling tangent about all of the things that Crusader Kings 3 could do in future, and summarize this update like this. Here's the conclusion, which a lot of you called for actually in some of my previous videos. You said, hey Jumbo, I really like the conclusions. Please continue to do them. So let's do that. Patch 1.5.1 adds changes to the Royal Court system. It improves artifacts, it adds a whole load of new events to support them and more, including new yearly events, adding more of a reoccurring theme and story building element to Crusader Kings. Again, this is just my opinion and analysis. If you disagree, please do let me know. Discussion is so important. Beyond that though, we saw some technical improvements to the performance of the game, to modding features, and a whole load of bug fixes. We also saw the Royal Court system be expanded out to tribal leaders, so those tribal king and emperor equivalents can now sit down and host their own royal court, and you've seen me do that in this footage here. I am playing as just one of those tribal leaders in the Far East. Of course, we saw graphical improvements to the royal courtroom itself as well, improved lighting effects and all sorts, hopefully help to also make that world more livable and more experienced by the rulers that live within it, because of course Crusader Kings is more than just a historical strategy game. It's about building that level, building that world. Royal Court sought to do that by adding an element to the game, an interface that wasn't just a wall of text or a map. And despite receiving mixed reviews on Steam, it has so far done that, and I think that this patch update helps to build that vision. Thank you very much for joining me today as I've unpacked the Crusader Kings 1.5.1 update. Hopefully, I will see you in the next one. Take care, everybody, and bye-bye.